I find this absolutely hysterical. I mean, really, come on. These guys are trying to stop a major motion picture from being circulated. They want to pull it from the offices, and they don't expect us to make major news. And they don't expect that any of the people who hold them in contempt for being racist bigots, that none of them will go to the press and say, hey, these are who these guys are. Here are their real names, their identities. It's absurd. I mean, the fact that they bring this lawsuit pushes them into the national news. It thrusts them into a controversy. And for them to expect their names not to be released, it's unbelievable. Now, either one of two things can happen. One, the national media will get hold of their names, which I suspect sooner or later will happen if this case is allowed to go on. Or two, they won't get hold of their names. Now, if they do get hold of the names, these guys are screwed because they become known as not just racist bigots, but stupid racist bigots who brought up this lawsuit, this ridiculous lawsuit. On the other hand, suppose nobody goes to the press and nobody ever finds out who their names are. What would that indicate? Well, if I were the lawyers for the defendants, I would be saying, look, how come we haven't heard their names in the press? How come nobody has ventured forth? Maybe this is evidence that it's not really widely known who these guys are, that their whole story about everybody knowing, everybody seeing the movie and ridiculing them and taking them to task is a bunch of malarkey. So either way, these guys are losers. Now, let's look at the merits of the case. Before I do so, I must make this disclaimer. I am not a lawyer. Anyone who relies on my advice for legal advice is a bigger fool than these clowns are. Okay, now there are several legal issues that do come up that even a novice like me who can recognize. First of all, as far as the contract goes, is it a valid contract? In order for a contract to be valid, you have to have a meeting of the minds, which raises the questions, if one of the minds is drunk out of its gourd, can there really be a true meeting of the minds? I suspect that this would probably be ensconced in California law, and it may vary from state to state, and I really do not know whether a contract is valid if the person who signs a contract is drunk. There's also another principle to bring up, and that is we don't allow people to get a free pass on their actions just because they're drunk. People are held responsible for actions they take when they're drunk. After all, they made the decision to get drunk. Primary example, suppose someone goes and commits drunk driving. Do you think a court is seriously going to listen to them if they say, Your Honor, please have mercy on me. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't. I mean, I was too drunk to realize what I was doing. You shouldn't hold me responsible because I was too drunk to know that what I was doing was wrong. I think the court would throw them out on their ear. So you have two conflicting principles. One, you want to hold people responsible for their behavior even when they're drunk. And two, if they're really drunk, can there be a meeting of the minds? And I'm not really sure where it's going to go on that. But let's assume that the contract is not valid, and we'll assume that everything in their claim turns out to be true and that they can prove it. And I'm not saying that it is true, but we're making the assumption, and we'll make the further assumption that the contract is invalidated. Then you have still another consideration, and that is contributory negligence. Okay, what is negligence? Well, if I am supposed to do something and I don't do it, and someone gets hurt because of it, that's negligence. If I have an obligation to do or refrain from doing. An example: if there's a big snowstorm outside my house and I don't shovel my sidewalk for a couple of days, and someone slips and falls and breaks their neck, I'm liable because I was negligent. On the other hand, if somebody is going down the sidewalks on roller skates, blindfolded, while juggling chickens, the fault of their accident is going to be largely theirs. Even though I didn't shovel the sidewalk as I was supposed to, a prudent person might have seen the ice and been able to avoid the risk. So when it goes into court in a lot of jurisdictions, and again this will vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, I may get off relatively easy because his contributory negligence was largely responsible for his being injured. Well, nobody told these students that they had to drink beer. Nobody held a gun to their head. I looked throughout the complaint and nowhere does it say that they were forced to drink. They may in their story somewhere say that they were paid to drink, I don't know, but nobody forced them to drink. Also, nobody put words in their mouths. Yeah, Borat has a way about him of cajoling people into saying things that they probably shouldn't say. He undoubtedly started off by making racist comments, but nobody forced him to agree with Borat. Sounds to me like the Mel Gibson defense that they're using, and if they didn't have a racist bone in their body, it's hard to believe that they would make statements such as, "I wish I owned a slave." Let's face it, somebody who's a Jew, for example, or even anybody actually who's got any decency whatsoever, would not agree with Borat no matter how drunk they were if Borat started saying, "You know, it's a damn shame that Hitler didn't wipe out all the Jews, that he wasn't successful." Of course they wouldn't say this. I mean, it's not within them. It's not them at all. And drinking doesn't plant new thoughts into your brain. What it does is it removes inhibitions. So it's going to be, I think, very hard for them to argue that this placed them in false light. Moreover, they make a big deal in the complaint about the film being shown in the United States. It seems to me like what they're basically saying, and if I were the lawyer for the defendant, I'd say, you mean these guys think what they did was perfectly all right, that if it had just been shown overseas in Europe, that they would have no qualms about their behavior? No, what they're really upset about is that people know what jerks they are. So if I were the judge and jury, how would I rule? Well, assuming that they could prove the allegations of the complaint, that the defendants did indeed entice them to drink and fraudulently got their signature, even assuming this, I might say that there wasn't a contract and that they should get a judgment in their favor. However, because they contributed to the situation, because it was their own damn foolishness that got them into this mess, and their own racist, bigoted views that ended up embarrassing them, they should be rewarded just a token $1. The people who were behind the Borat movies, if they did what is alleged, they did do some wrong, and it would be good for the court to give the message that they did wrong. But to give these fools any sort of major reward for their bigoted, idiotic behavior, that's not what the legal system is all about. Our court system is overburdened. It really shouldn't have to bear the weight of idiotic jerks who refuse to take the consequences of their actions, and it should not give them any substantial reward. Well, this has been the Masked Analyst, under and in.